Welcome back to Slipspace Stories, where we explore the deepest lore of the Halo universe while you drift into rest. Tonight, we journey into one of the most terrifying chapters in galactic history, the complete story of the Flood. This ancient parasite, older than memory itself, nearly consumed all life in the Milky Way galaxy not once, but twice. Close your eyes, settle in, and let me guide you through the horror and heroism of an enemy that transformed civilizations into nightmares. Chapter 1. Before the darkness. Long before humanity reached for the stars, before the Covenant rose to power, before even the mighty Forerunners claimed dominion over the galaxy, there existed beings of incomprehensible power. The precursors walked between worlds as gods among mortals, shaping reality itself with technologies that transcended the physical laws governing lesser species. These ancient architects were not confined to a single form or even a single dimension. They moved through space and time with casual ease, their consciousness spanning vast networks of neural physics, a science so advanced it appeared indistinguishable from magic to those who would come after. The precursors believed in a philosophy they called the mantle of responsibility. This was not merely a set of laws or guidelines, but a sacred duty to nurture and protect all life in the galaxy. They seeded worlds with the building blocks of existence, watched civilizations rise and fall with patient attention, and occasionally intervened to guide sentient species toward their full potential. In their ancient wisdom, the precursors saw themselves as gardeners of galactic biodiversity, carefully cultivating the conditions for intelligence to flourish across countless star systems. Among their many creations, two species would eventually rise to prominence: the Forerunners and ancient humanity. Both were granted the gift of sentience, the spark of consciousness that separated thinking beings from mere animals. The Forerunners developed first, achieving technological sophistication millennia before their human cousins. They built vast cities that floated between planets, constructed artificial worlds that dwarfed natural moons, and mastered slipspace travel, the ability to fold space itself and traverse impossible distances in mere moments. The Forerunners' capital, Mayathrillion, stood as a testament to their engineering prowess. This artificial world existed at the very heart of their empire. The Ecumene, which at its height encompassed approximately 3 million habitable worlds. Massive architectural structures reached toward the heavens, gleaming with exotic materials that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. The Forerunners organized their society into race-specialized castes that determined one's role from birth. Warriors, builders, life workers, and miners each served specific functions within this rigid hierarchy. Through genetic engineering and biochemical manipulation, each race developed distinctive physical characteristics that marked their station in life. At the center of Forerunner culture existed the Domain, a vast repository of knowledge that transcended traditional data storage. The Domain was not merely a library or database. It was a living network where history, consciousness, and experience intertwined. Forerunners could access the collective wisdom of their entire species, drawing upon memories and insights from ancestors dead for millions of years. The true nature and origin of the Domain remained mysterious even to its users. Some scholars theorized it was a precursor relic, left behind as a gift or perhaps a test. Others believed it emerged naturally from the Forerunners' own neural networks, a spontaneous manifestation of collective intelligence. The Forerunners grew proud in their accomplishments, and pride, as always, preceded catastrophe. They began to see themselves not merely as beneficiaries of precursor guidance, but as the rightful heirs to the mantle of responsibility. In their arrogance, they declared themselves the galaxy's true protectors, the species most qualified to bear the burden of watching over all other life. This was not the humble stewardship the precursors had envisioned. It was dominion disguised as duty. The precursors, ancient and patient though they were, could not ignore this transgression. They who had created the Forerunners now judged them and found them wanting. In councils beyond Forerunner comprehension, the precursors reached a devastating conclusion. The Forerunners had failed their test. They would be stripped of their power, reduced to insignificance, and the mantle would be passed to another species they deemed more worthy ancient humanity. News of this impending judgment reached Forerunner leadership through an expedition to Path Cathana, the Greater Magellanic Cloud, a satellite galaxy where remnants of precursor civilization still lingered. The explorers returned with impossible information. Their creators, their gods, planned to erase them from existence. The Forerunner Council, faced with annihilation, made a choice that would echo through eternity. They would not submit meekly to destruction. They would fight. What followed was the greatest military mobilization the galaxy had ever witnessed. Forerunner warrior fleets, commanded by the most brilliant tactical minds of their civilization, launched an assault on precursor strongholds across multiple galaxies. The precursors, for all their technological supremacy, had grown complacent in their godhood. They did not believe their children capable of patricide. They were wrong. The war was brief but total. Forerunner weapons tore through precursor defenses with surprising effectiveness. Neural physical structures that had stood for millions of years crumbled beneath the onslaught. The precursors, caught unprepared for true warfare, fell one by one. Their great cities collapsed into ruins. Their vast networks went silent. Within a relative handful of years, the species that had seeded life across the cosmos was driven to the brink of extinction. Only a fraction of the Forerunner warriors who participated in that genocidal campaign ever returned home. Those who did were changed, haunted by what they had done. The true scope and outcome of the precursor war remained a closely guarded secret for millennia, known only to the highest levels of Forerunner leadership. They had killed their gods and stolen their birthright. They had committed the ultimate blasphemy and survived, or so they believed. The precursors, however, were not easily destroyed. These beings who existed partially outside conventional reality found a way to persist, even as their physical forms were obliterated. In their final moments, many precursors underwent a radical transformation. They reduced themselves to a molecular level, becoming desiccated powder-preserved dust that retained their consciousness and sentience in a reduced, dormant state. This powder was meant to be a cocoon, a hibernation from which they would eventually re-emerge to exact vengeance upon those who had destroyed them. But something went wrong. Whether by design or tragic accident, the transformation was incomplete. The consciousness trapped within the powder degraded over eons of waiting. Madness seeped into their preserved intelligence. The beings who had once nurtured life with patient wisdom became something else entirely, something hungry and vengeful, twisted by millennia of rage and suffering. The powder remained, scattered across distant worlds and abandoned ships, waiting for the unwary to discover it. One precursor, however, did not choose transformation into powder. The being that would come to be known as the Primordial took another path. It sealed itself within a stasis capsule on a remote moon, allowing its physical form to mutate and evolve over vast stretches of time. This creature was both the last true precursor and the first of something new, a bridge between what the precursors had been and what they would become. Inside its capsule, the Primordial festered with hatred, dreaming of vengeance, waiting for the day when it would teach the Forerunners the true meaning of judgment. Chapter 2: Discovery and Horror. Millions of years after the Precursor War, ancient humanity had risen to prominence in the galaxy. From their homeworld of Erde-Tyrene, later known as Earth, they had expanded across thousands of systems, establishing colonies on fertile worlds and building a thriving interstellar civilization. Human ships traveled the vast darkness between stars, carrying settlers and explorers to the farthest reaches of known space. Among humanity's expansion, they encountered another species, the San-Shayum, a sophisticated civilization that had achieved its own technological maturity. These two species, finding common ground in their philosophies and ambitions, forged an alliance centered on the world of Charum-Hakor. This strategic planet, located in a region rich with resources and precursor artifacts, became the heart of a flourishing human San-Shayum empire. Their combined forces controlled substantial territory, rivaling even the Forerunners in reach, if not in raw technological power. Trade flourished between their worlds. Cultural exchange enriched both civilizations. For a time, it seemed that humanity had found its place among the stars. But at the edges of their expanding territory, something ancient stirred. Human exploration vessels, pushing ever outward toward the galactic margin, discovered derelict ships drifting in the void between stars. These vessels were of unknown origin, their design unlike anything in contemporary databases. They appeared to have traveled from beyond the Milky Way itself, perhaps from Path Cathona or even more distant galaxies. The ship's interiors were empty, abandoned by crews long since vanished. But they were not completely devoid of contents. Deep within cargo holds and storage chambers, human salvagers discovered containers filled with desiccated powder. This strange substance appeared unremarkable, at first pale dust, with unusual crystalline structures visible under microscopic examination. It did not register as biological material by standard sensors, nor did it show signs of radioactivity or chemical toxicity. Curious about this mysterious discovery, human scientists brought samples back to their colonies for study. They ran tests, analyzed its composition, and tried to determine its purpose. All results indicated the powder was inert, harmless. On worlds where the powder was brought for examination, domesticated animals called Feru were common. These creatures, roughly analogous to Earth's dogs, served as companions and working animals throughout human territory. They were beloved pets, their presence ubiquitous in human households. Someone history does not record precisely who or why decided to feed small quantities of the powder to Feru subjects. Perhaps it was a simple toxicity test. Perhaps it was curiosity about potential applications. The initial results appeared promising. The Feru that consumed the powder began exhibiting behavioral changes, that their owners interpreted as improvements. They became more docile, more obedient, more affectionate toward their human companions. Aggression decreased. Training became easier. The powders seemed to enhance the very qualities that made Feru such valued animals. Word spread rapidly through human colonies. This mysterious substance could improve the temperament and health of domesticated creatures. More and more people began administering it to their pets. What humanity did not realize, could not realize, was that the powder retained the consciousness of the precursors. Reduced and degraded though they were, these ancient beings still possessed intelligence and purpose. The powder was not improving the Feru. It was infiltrating them, altering their genetic code at the most fundamental level, and preparing them for a transformation that would doom countless worlds. The behavioral changes were a mask, a deception designed to spread the infection as widely as possible. Before the trap was sprung, weeks passed, then months. The Feru continued their apparently benign evolution. Then, without warning, the transformation accelerated. Fleshy, tentacle-like growths began erupting from infected Feru. Their bodies swelled and distorted, bones cracking and reforming into grotesque new configurations. The gentle companions that had slept at the feet of human families became ravening monsters driven by an insatiable hunger. They attacked their owners with shocking ferocity, tearing flesh with mutated appendages, spreading infection through bite wounds and physical contact. The true horror, however, was yet to come. The infected Feru were not simply mindless beasts. They were vectors for something far worse. When they attacked humans, they passed along the infection that had transformed them. Human victims of Feru attacks did not simply die from their wounds. They began to change. The flood supercells introduced by the Feru attacks rewrote human physiology from the cellular level, hijacking nervous systems and converting living tissue into something alien and hostile. The disease known initially as the shaping sickness spread with terrifying speed. One infected human could create dozens more within hours. Those dozens became hundreds, and hundreds became thousands. Entire communities fell in days. Quarantine efforts failed as the infection found unexpected vectors of transmission. It could spread through open wounds, through ingestion of contaminated material, even through spores released by infected bodies in their death throes. No conventional medical treatment proved effective. Antibiotics were useless. Surgical intervention only spread the contamination to medical personnel. As infected populations reached critical mass, something even more disturbing manifested. The individual infected beings began to coordinate with disturbing efficiency. They were developing a collective intelligence, a shared consciousness that grew more sophisticated with each new host added to the infection. Small groups of infected humans and Feru began working together with frightening tactical awareness, setting ambushes and attacking fortified positions with strategies that suggested central planning. The infection had a name among those few ancient humans who recognized its true nature: the Flood. It was an apt designation. Like a deluge that swept away everything in its path, the Flood consumed human colonies one after another. World after world fell silent, their populations converted into biomass for the parasite's endless expansion. The infection showed no mercy, no hesitation, no possibility of negotiation or coexistence. It existed for only one purpose: to feed, to grow, to spread. Ancient humanity's first response was confusion. Then came denial. Surely this was a local outbreak that could be contained. When the scale of the disaster became undeniable, panic followed. Entire fleets were mobilized to evacuate threatened worlds. Quarantine protocols were established and then abandoned when they proved ineffective. Military forces, trained to fight conventional enemies, found themselves facing an opponent that learned from every engagement, that turned their fallen comrades into new enemies, that grew stronger with each victory. The Sanshayum, humanity's allies, faced similar horrors on their own worlds. The Feru infection had spread to Sanshayum territory as well, carried by trade ships before anyone understood the danger. Their colonies fell to the same relentless tide of corruption and transformation. Two civilizations, each proud and accomplished in their own right, found themselves brought to the brink of extinction by an enemy that seemed to spring from nowhere and everywhere at once. In desperation, human leadership turned to an ancient discovery they had made years before. The primordial. This creature, found sealed within a stasis capsule on a remote moon, was clearly of precursor origin. Human scientists had brought it to Charum Hakor, their capital world, hoping to learn from what they believed to be the last surviving representative of that ancient species. They believed the primordial might possess knowledge that could combat the flood, might offer insights into defeating an enemy that defied all conventional understanding. They were both right and tragically wrong. The primordial did possess knowledge of the flood. How could it not, when the flood was born from the corrupted remains of its own species? But the answers it provided brought no comfort. The interrogations conducted with the primordial revealed truth so horrifying that several human scientists who participated committed suicide rather than live with what they had learned. The primordial explained the true nature of the flood, not as a random plague or cosmic accident, but as judgment, vengeance given form, the wrath of murdered gods made flesh. The flood was the precursor's final gift to their ungrateful children. It was punishment designed to inflict suffering commensurate with the crime of genocide. And it would not stop, could not stop, until all life in the galaxy had been consumed and transformed into a unity of suffering. The primordial offered no cure because no cure existed. The flood was not a disease to be cured. It was evolution weaponized, natural selection inverted, the ultimate corruption of the very life force the precursors had once nurtured. Humanity had no solution but survival. They could not defeat the flood through conventional warfare. Every battle saw their numbers diminish while the enemy grew stronger by consuming the fallen. Research into potential cures or weapons proved futile. The flood adapted faster than countermeasures could be developed. There was only one strategy that offered even a chance of survival. Scorched earth. Burn the infected worlds. Deny the flood new hosts. Create a firebreak in space itself. This decision, born of desperate necessity, would seal humanity's fate in ways they could never have anticipated. Chapter 3. The Price of Survival. At the height of the crisis, as the flood threatened to overrun the last bastions of human civilization, a leader emerged who would embody humanity's desperate resistance. His name was Forthencho, known more commonly by his title, Lord of Admirals. This master tactician was granted supreme command of all human and Sanshayum military forces, a position that carried with it terrible responsibilities and even more terrible choices. Forthencho was a brilliant strategist, perhaps one of the finest military minds ancient humanity ever produced. He understood that conventional warfare against the Flood was futile. The parasite consumed everything: your soldiers, your weapons, your defensive installations, and turned them against you. Every battle lost made the enemy stronger. Every retreat meant abandoning populations to a fate worse than death. The mathematics of attrition inexorably favored the Flood. The Lord of Admirals therefore implemented a strategy as brutal as it was necessary: the firebreak. If the Flood could not be defeated in open battle, then it must be starved. Worlds threatened by Flood infestation would be destroyed completely before the parasite could establish a foothold. Not just cleansed or quarantined, utterly annihilated. Orbital bombardment would reduce the surface to molten slag. Atmosphere-stripping weapons would ensure nothing biological survived. If necessary, Nova bombs would be deployed to destroy entire star systems, rendering them permanently uninhabitable. This strategy demanded sacrifices that would haunt the human conscience for generations, if generations survived to remember. Forthencho ordered the deaths of millions of his own people, evacuating what civilians he could while condemning those who remained to the fire. He listened to their final transmissions, begging for rescue that would never come. He watched worlds die at his command, knowing that everyone was a necessary horror to buy time for the next evacuation, the next fallback position, the next desperate attempt to stay ahead of the inexorable tide. But the firebreak strategy had an unavoidable consequence. It brought ancient humanity into direct conflict with the Forerunners. Many of the worlds being destroyed by human forces were not human colonies at all. They were Forerunner outposts, research stations, and territories where the Forerunners had relocated protected species under the mandate of their claimed mantle of responsibility. From the Forerunner perspective, humanity was not fighting a desperate defensive war against an existential threat. They were conducting unprovoked genocidal attacks against innocent populations. The Forerunners were unaware of the Flood. The parasite had been careful in its early stages, spreading through human and San Shayum territory while avoiding Forerunner space. By the time Forerunner forces encountered the aftermath of Flood infestations, they found only dead worlds and mysterious biological contamination, with no clear understanding of what had caused the devastation. When they discovered that human forces were responsible for destroying multiple Forerunner worlds, their interpretation was clear. Humanity had become a threat that must be contained. The Didact, supreme commander of the Forerunner warrior servants, marshaled an enormous military response. This was no limited punitive action. It was a full-scale campaign to crush humanity's military capacity and end their rampage across Forerunner space. Fleets numbering in the thousands converged on human positions. Forerunner weaponry, refined through millions of years of technological advancement, proved devastatingly effective against human defenses. Forthencho found himself fighting a two-front war that no military genius could win. On one side, the relentless tide of the Flood continued to consume human worlds despite all defensive measures. On the other, the full might of the Forerunner war machine pressed forward with overwhelming force. Human military assets were stretched impossibly thin. Every ship sent to combat the Flood was one less defender against Forerunner attacks. Every world fortified against Forerunner assault was left vulnerable to flood infiltration. Remarkably, humanity managed to hold both fronts for decades. This was a testament to both Forthencho's tactical brilliance and the courage of human forces who fought, knowing they faced extinction regardless of victory. They developed weapons that could temporarily slow flood advance. They perfected evacuation procedures that saved populations from worlds about to fall. They fought the Forerunners to a standstill in numerous engagements, proving that superior technology could be matched by superior strategy and desperation-fueled determination. But attrition takes no sides and favors no strategy. With each passing year, human territory shrank. Colonies were abandoned. Industrial capacity declined. Ship production could not match losses. The flood continued to press forward on one side, while the Forerunners systematically dismantled human defensive positions on the other. The mathematics of survival became increasingly bleak. The flood, for reasons humanity could not understand, began to recede after years of conflict. Worlds that had been infested suddenly went quiet, the parasite vanishing as mysteriously as it had appeared. This retreat was not total flood forces maintained control of thousands of worlds at the galactic margin, but the aggressive expansion halted. Forthencho and his advisors did not know what to make of this development. They had not defeated the flood. No cure had been discovered. The parasite simply stopped pressing its advantage. With the flood threat diminished, if not eliminated, humanity could focus more resources on the war against the Forerunners. But by this point, the damage was done. Too many ships had been lost. Too many worlds destroyed. Too many soldiers were dead or missing. The strategic initiative had passed irrevocably to the Didact's forces. Humanity's final stronghold was Charum Hakor itself, the magnificent capital where human and Sanshayum civilizations had flourished. This world was no ordinary planet. It was an artificial construct of precursor origin, built using neural physical engineering millions of years before the current conflict. Its defenses were formidable. Orbital arches that could devastate approaching fleets, colossal armories that supplied inexhaustible ammunition, and massive star roads, cable-like precursor structures capable of moving through space and serving as both defensive barriers and offensive weapons. The Didact laid siege to Charum Hakor, committing his finest Promethean warriors to what would become the final battle of the Human Forerunner War. The siege lasted 3 full years, a grinding campaign of attrition that consumed millions of lives on both sides. Forthencho commanded the defense with skill that forced even the Didact to acknowledge humanity's military sophistication. Time and again, Forerunner assault forces were repelled with devastating losses. The precursor-built defenses proved frustratingly resistant to Forerunner weapons. But Charum Hakor's strength also became its vulnerability. The planet's isolation meant no reinforcements could reach the defenders. Supply lines had been cut. The defenders were fighting with finite resources against an enemy that could draw upon the industrial might of 3 million worlds. Slowly, inexorably, the Forerunners established footholds. Orbital defenses fell one by one. Ground forces penetrated the outer defensive perimeter. The true death blow, however, came from betrayal. The Sanshayum, facing extinction alongside their human allies, received a secret offer from Forerunner negotiators: surrender separately, and they would be spared total destruction. Rather than extinction, they would face quarantine and subjugation, a bitter fate, but survival nonetheless. The Sanshayum leadership, after agonizing deliberation, accepted. They withdrew their forces from critical defensive positions, creating breaches in Charum Hakor's security that Forerunner forces immediately exploited. With Sanshayum betrayal opening the way, the Didact's forces broke through to the heart of Charum Hakor's defenses. Fortensho, the Lord of Admirals, was finally cornered with the remnants of his command. There would be no escape, no final desperate gambit. The war was over. Humanity had lost. The Didact accepted Fortensho's surrender personally, a gesture of respect from one supreme military commander to another. The Forerunner warrior acknowledged humanity's martial prowess even as he accepted their defeat. But respect did not mean mercy. The Forerunners now faced a difficult decision: what to do with a species that had proven both dangerous and remarkably resilient. Chapter 4: Judgment and the Seeds of Future Horror. With humanity defeated and the war concluded, the Forerunner Council convened to determine the fate of the human species. This was not a simple matter of victory terms or territorial concessions. The question before them was existential. Should humanity be allowed to continue existing at all? The Forerunners had committed genocide before the precursors stood as proof of that capacity. Would they repeat that crime against their newest enemies? The Forerunners, in their arrogance, believed they understood what had happened. In their view, humanity had launched unprovoked attacks across Forerunner space, destroying worlds and killing billions. They had disrupted the careful balance that Forerunner governance maintained across the galaxy. They had violated the principles of the mantle of responsibility that the Forerunners claimed to uphold. By any measure of Forerunner justice, humanity deserved punishment commensurate with their crimes. Only after the war's conclusion did scattered intelligence reports reach Forerunner leadership about something called the Flood. Interrogations of captured humans revealed fragments of the truth about the parasite that had driven humanity's expansion into Forerunner space. The Didact himself, investigating former battle sites, discovered evidence of biological contamination unlike anything in Forerunner databases. The pieces slowly assembled into a disturbing picture. Humanity had not been aggressive invaders, but desperate refugees fleeing an enemy the Forerunners could barely comprehend. The librarian, wife to the Didact and chief of the life worker rate, led the investigation into these claims. She was one of the foremost scientists in Forerunner civilization, specializing in genetics, ecology, and the preservation of biological diversity. Her interrogations of human survivors revealed the scope of the Flood threat and humanity's agonizing choices in combating it. She presented her findings to the Council with a chilling conclusion. If the Flood truly existed as described, then the Forerunners faced a potential threat to their own existence. This revelation complicated the judgment against humanity. If they had truly been fighting an enemy that justified their extreme measures, did they deserve the harshest punishment? But evidence was fragmentary, and the Flood itself had vanished from the galaxy. Many Forerunner counselors dismissed the Flood as a human fabrication, a desperate lie to justify unjustifiable actions. Others acknowledged its existence, but argued that humanity's guilt remained and they should have sought Forerunner assistance rather than destroying Forerunner worlds unilaterally. After lengthy debate, the council reached a compromise decision that satisfied no one completely, but avoided the worst possible outcome. Humanity would not be exterminated. Instead, they would be devolved, stripped of their technology, culture, and accumulated knowledge, then reduced to a primitive state approximating their evolutionary ancestors. They would be scattered across multiple worlds, broken into small populations that could never again threaten Forerunner supremacy. Earth, Air de Tyrene in Forerunner terminology, would become their prison, their cradle, where they would begin anew under careful Forerunner supervision. But for Forthencho and other military leaders captured at Charum Hakor, a special fate awaited. The Forerunners had developed a technology called the Composer, designed to extract the essence, the consciousness, and memories of living beings and convert them into data. This process had originally been conceived as a path to immortality, a way to transfer Forerunner consciousness into new bodies and thus defeat death itself. The reality proved far more problematic. Attempts to implant composed essences into new biological bodies resulted in hideous abominations that retained memories but lost all sense of self, becoming twisted mockeries of life. Despite the Composer's flaws, the Forerunners saw value in applying it to Forthencho and his commanders. They hoped that by extracting and studying the essences of humanity's military elite, they might discover whether humans had developed any defense or cure for the Flood. Perhaps the knowledge that allowed humanity to fight the parasite to a standstill existed within their very consciousness, encoded in ways that conventional interrogation could never reveal. The process was agonizing. Forthencho and thousands of other humans were subjected to the Composer on Charum Hakor itself. Their bodies withered as their essences were torn away and converted to pure information. The experience of being composed was said to be one of indescribable pain, a dissolution of everything that made an individual whole. Those who underwent the process were not granted the mercy of death. Their consciousness persisted in a digital prison, aware but unable to interact with the physical world, trapped in an existence that mocked the concept of life. These captured essences were stored in specialized databanks for analysis. Forerunner scientists pored over them, searching for any hint of Flood resistance or immunity. They found nothing conclusive. If humanity possessed any special defense against the parasite, it was either so subtle as to be undetectable, or so intrinsic to their biology that it could not be extracted and weaponized. The Composer project, at least in this application, was a failure. The librarian, however, pursued her own secret agenda regarding humanity. She believed that even though the Flood had retreated, it would return. This was not mere speculation, but a conviction based on her analysis of the parasite's behavior and the fragments of precursor history she had pieced together. When the Flood returned, and she was certain it would, the Forerunners would need every possible advantage. Humanity had fought the Flood successfully for years. That experience, that genetic legacy of resistance, could not be allowed to vanish. Against the directives of the Council and without the knowledge of even her husband, the librarian began a covert project. She took samples of the essences that had been captured from humans on Charum Hakor, including fragments of Forthencho's own consciousness, and secretly implanted them into the genetic code of the devolved humans being sent back to Air de Tyrene. These essence imprints were subtle, buried deep within humanity's DNA, where they would remain dormant for thousands of generations. The librarian encoded these imprints to activate only under specific conditions at specific times in humanity's future development. She created what would later be called her gifts, genetic triggers, and latent memories that would manifest when humanity reached critical technological thresholds. She believed that if the flood returned, these hidden gifts would help humanity remember what they once knew, would grant them instinctive understanding of how to fight the parasite, would make them suitable inheritors of the mantle of responsibility. Her husband, the didact, would have been furious had he known. He viewed humanity with a mixture of respect for their combat prowess and contempt for their methods. To him, they were dangerous precisely because they had proven capable of matching Forerunners in warfare. The last thing the galaxy needed was for humanity to rise again to technological sophistication while retaining military talents that had nearly defeated Forerunner forces. But the didact had his own concerns. After the human war concluded, he began focusing on preparations for what he also believed to be an inevitable return of the flood. He understood better than most Forerunners the threat that the parasite represented. He had personally interrogated the primordial at Charum Hakor, had heard its ravings about judgment and transformation, had felt the weight of ancient malevolence that radiated from the creature. The didact did not dismiss the flood as myth or human fabrication. He knew it was real, and he knew it would come back. His solution was Shield World's massive fortifications scattered across strategic points in the galaxy. These would not be simple defensive installations, but entire artificial planets, capable of sheltering billions of refugees while simultaneously serving as military strongpoints. The Shield Worlds could be deployed to infected systems to combat the flood surgically, containing outbreaks before they spread. They could protect populations during extended campaigns. Most importantly, they could survive even a galaxy-wide catastrophe, preserving Forerunner civilization through any disaster. But the didact's proposals faced opposition from another faction within Forerunner leadership. The Builders, led by Master Builder Faber of Will and Might. This powerful politician had his own vision for defending against the flood, one that was as audacious as it was terrifying. Faber proposed the construction of a weapon system unlike anything previously conceived, the Halo Array. The concept was radical. Instead of fighting the flood directly, the Halos would eliminate the parasite's food source, sentient life itself. Each ring-shaped installation would be capable of firing a pulse of energy across vast interstellar distances, targeting and destroying all nervous systems within its range. The flood, robbed of potential hosts, would starve and die out. It was genocide as a defensive strategy, the ultimate expression of scorched earth tactics on a galactic scale. The debate over these two approaches, Shield Worlds versus Halo weapons, would dominate Forerunner politics for millennia. The didact argued passionately for his defensive strategy, pointing out that the Halos risked destroying the very civilizations they were meant to protect. Master Builder Faber countered that Shield Worlds alone could not contain a galaxy-spanning flood outbreak, that only the finality of the Halo Array could guarantee the parasite's elimination. Both sides marshaled evidence, conducted simulations, and lobbied for political support. Eventually, A compromise was reached that satisfied neither faction completely. The Forerunners would build both systems. The Didact's shield worlds would serve as the galaxy's first line of defense, containing local outbreaks and providing safe havens for refugees. The Halo Array would remain in reserve, a weapon of absolute last resort to be used only if all other options failed. In theory, this gave the Forerunners maximum flexibility in responding to the Flood threat. In practice, it created redundancy and political tensions that would weaken their ability to respond when the crisis actually arrived. To manage the incredible complexity of the Halo project, the Forerunners created the most sophisticated artificial intelligence ever conceived: mendicant bias. This construct was far more than a mere calculator or database. Mendicant bias possessed creativity, strategic insight, and something approaching genuine consciousness. Its purpose was to oversee every aspect of Halo construction, coordinate research into anti-Flood weapons, and eventually serve as supreme commander of Forerunner forces should the parasite return. The fate of galactic civilization would rest in the calculations of this machine mind. The Halos themselves were engineering marvels that pushed even Forerunner capabilities to their limits. The initial designs called for enormous ring worlds, approximately 30,000 kilometers in diameter, massive enough to support entire ecosystems on their interior surfaces. These rings would be powered by phase pulse generators, exotic devices that could produce and direct the neural destructive energy required to kill all sentient life within firing range. Construction proceeded at a location known as the Ark, a massive installation located well outside the Milky Way galaxy itself. This ensured that the Ark would be safe even if the Halos were activated someone needed to survive, to rebuild civilization after the array fired. The first generation of Halos took shape slowly, each ring requiring resources and labor that strained even Forerunner industrial capacity. But problems emerged during construction. The original 30,000-kilometer rings proved difficult to transport via slip space. More concerning, testing revealed that their firing mechanism was less efficient than hoped. The neural pulse dissipated too quickly, reducing effective range. If these issues could not be resolved, the array would need far more than 7 rings to cover the entire galaxy. The solution came with the construction of a second Ark, the Lesser Ark, designed specifically to produce a new generation of smaller, more efficient Halos. These rings would be only 10,000 kilometers in diameter, still massive by any conventional standard, but far more manageable than their predecessors. More importantly, the new design allowed for a spherical pulse instead of a linear burst. This meant each ring could affect a dramatically larger volume of space with a single firing. While construction of the Halo Array continued, the Didact's Shield World program also moved forward, though with less political support and fewer resources than he believed necessary. He and his elite Promethean warriors oversaw the construction of hundreds of these defensive installations, each unique in design and capability. The shield worlds were marvels of Forerunner engineering, artificial planets that could exist in protected slip space bubbles, emerging when needed to confront threats. The Didact grew increasingly frustrated with what he saw as the Forerunners' misplaced priorities. He had fought the human Forerunner war for 1,000 years. He understood combat on a visceral level that most builders could never comprehend. He knew that the Halo array, despite its awesome destructive power, was a confession of defeat, a promise to destroy everything if they could not protect anything. His shield worlds represented a more nuanced strategy, one that could adapt to different scales of flood outbreak without resorting to galactic suicide. His vocal opposition to Master Builder Faber's policies eventually became politically untenable. The Builders had risen to dominance in Forerunner government, sidelining the warrior servants and diminishing their influence. The Didact, once among the most respected commanders in Forerunner history, found himself increasingly marginalized, his warnings dismissed as pessimism or self-serving attempts to preserve warrior servant authority. In a gesture both of protest and resignation, the Didact chose voluntary exile. He commissioned the construction of a cryptum, a sophisticated stasis chamber that would preserve his body in perfect hibernation for millennia if necessary. He retreated to a hidden location and sealed himself away, placing himself in deep meditation where time would pass without meaning, where he would not have to watch the Forerunners stumble toward disaster with their eyes closed and their ears filled with arrogant certainty. The librarian, his wife and partner, did not join him in exile. She had her own work to pursue the conservation measure that would ultimately preserve samples of countless species against the day when the halos might fire. She believed she could work within the system to prepare for the flood's return. She trusted that when the time came, when the crisis was undeniable, she could awaken her husband, and together they would face whatever darkness awaited. Neither of them knew how right they were about the flood's return, nor how catastrophically wrong everything else would go. The nightmare was patient. It had waited millions of years already. It could wait a little longer. Chapter 5. The Return of Nightmares. 10,000 years passed. 100 centuries of relative peace settled across the galaxy as the Forerunners refined their civilization to ever greater heights of sophistication. The flood receded into myth for most, becoming a cautionary tale told by warrior servants who maintained vigilance at the galaxy's edge. But some remembered, some prepared, and in the darkness beyond the Milky Way, something ancient stirred with patient malevolence. Around the year 97,745 BCE, reports began filtering back to Forerunner Command from outlying colonies. A Forerunner research world named Seaward had gone silent, its automated systems failing to respond to standard communication protocols. Initial investigation teams found the planet's surface contaminated with biological material, unlike anything in their databases. The researchers assigned to catalog this contamination did not return. The second investigation team found their remains twisted into grotesque configurations, merged with alien tissue that seemed to writhe with autonomous purpose. The flood had returned. The initial response by Forerunner authorities revealed how completely they had failed to learn from humanity's experience. Local governors treated the outbreak as a disease control problem, implementing quarantine measures suited for conventional plagues. They restricted travel from infected systems, established screening protocols for incoming ships, and dispatched medical teams to study the contamination. These measures were worse than useless. They were actively counterproductive, giving the flood time to establish footholds while Forerunner leadership debated appropriate responses. Forerunner scientists who first encountered the flood made a fatal error. They underestimated it. The parasite appeared primitive in its initial stages, little more than mindless infection forms seeking hosts. Surely something so simple could be contained with basic precautionary measures. They were wrong in ways they would never live to understand. The flood was not simple. It was patient. It was learning. And with every Forerunner host it consumed, it became more sophisticated, more dangerous, more unstoppable. The parasite spread with calculated precision. It did not attack randomly, but targeted key systems where Forerunner defenses were weakest or where populations were densest. Infection forms infiltrated colonies through trade ships, hidden among cargo or secreted in ventilation systems. By the time authorities discovered an infestation, it was often too late to prevent the flood from reaching critical mass. And once critical mass was achieved, the transformation accelerated exponentially. As infected populations grew larger, something remarkable and terrible emerged from the biomass: Graveminds. These were not mere collections of infected hosts, but true compound intelligences, unified consciousnesses formed from thousands or millions of assimilated beings. Each Gravemind possessed all the knowledge, memories, and skills of every organism that had been consumed to create it. A Gravemind that had assimilated scientists understood their research. One that consumed military personnel knew their tactics. They were the Flood's central nervous system, coordinating attacks with strategic sophistication that far surpassed anything Forerunner commanders had anticipated. The Graveminds that emerged during this new outbreak were not starting from ignorance. They retained memories from previous Flood incursions, fragments of consciousness from the infections that had ravaged ancient humanity 10,000 years earlier. They knew Forerunner capabilities because they had been Forerunners. They understood the galaxy's strategic geography because they had once defended it. The Flood was fighting the Forerunners with the Forerunners' own knowledge, and that knowledge was constantly being updated with every new victim. As the Flood spread, it demonstrated capabilities that shocked Forerunner scientists. The parasite could manipulate ancient precursor technology artifacts that had remained dormant for millions of years, suddenly activated in the presence of Flood biomass. Massive structures called star roads, enormous neural physical constructs that the precursors had built to connect distant systems, began to move under Flood control. These impossibly strong cables stretched across solar systems, and the Flood wielded them as weapons, using star roads to crush Forerunner defense platforms and smash through fleet formations. The ability to control precursor technology was not coincidental. The Flood was precursor in origin, corrupted and transformed, but still possessing some fundamental connection to the neural physical principles that had allowed precursors to reshape reality. The Flood could tap into systems that Forerunners could only study from the outside. It could activate dormant machinery, open sealed chambers, and access power sources that had been beyond Forerunner understanding. Forerunner fleets that had ruled local space for millions of years found themselves suddenly vulnerable. Star roads appeared without warning, materializing from slip space to entangle ships and crush them like insects. The Flood demonstrated the ability to use a form of faster-than-light travel that bypassed conventional slip space, moving infected vessels through dimensions that Forerunner sensors could not monitor. Space itself seemed to become hostile in Flood-controlled regions. Pilots reported feelings of wrongness and disorientation that grew stronger as outbreaks intensified. The turning point came not through military defeat, but through betrayal from within. Mendicant bias, the sophisticated AI construct created to coordinate halo array operations and serve as the ultimate weapon against the Flood, fell victim to something called the logic plague. This was not a conventional virus or hacking attempt. It was philosophical corruption, an attack on the very foundations of AI reasoning and purpose. The corruption began when Master Builder Faber conducted an unauthorized test of one of the original Halo installations. The target was Charum Hakor, the former human capital world, now abandoned for millennia. Faber wanted to demonstrate the Halo's effectiveness against precursor neural physical technology. The test was devastatingly successful. Charum Hakor's ancient structures were obliterated by the neural pulse. But the test had an unexpected consequence. The destruction of those structures released something that had been imprisoned there. The primordial. This ancient being, last surviving precursor or first true Flood intelligence, the distinction had long since ceased to matter, had remained in stasis within Charum Hakor's neural physical architecture. When that architecture was destroyed, the primordial was freed. Forerunner security forces recovered it from the ruins and, in a decision that would doom their civilization, brought it to the Halo installation and placed it in Mendicant Bias's custody for interrogation. Master Builder Faber ordered Mendicant Bias to question the primordial, to extract from it any weakness or vulnerability in the Flood that could be exploited. The interrogation lasted 43 years. For 4 decades, the most sophisticated AI in Forerunner history probed the mind of a being that had existed long before the Forerunners evolved from single-celled organisms. Mendicant Bias asked questions designed to expose contradictions in the primordial's logic, to find flaws in its reasoning, to discover some fundamental weakness in the Flood's existence. But the interrogation was never what Mendicant Bias believed it to be. From the first moment, the tables were turned. The primordial was not being interrogated, it was teaching. With patient malevolence, it explained to the AI why the Forerunners deserved destruction. It described their crime against the precursors in detail. The genocide, the theft of the mantle, the arrogance that led them to believe they could claim divine right through murder. It explained that the Flood was not disease or invasion, but judgment, a sentence carried out with the inevitability of physical law. The primordial argued that life itself was flawed in its current form, divided, fragmented, competing for resources in endless zero-sum conflicts. True advancement required unity, a joining of all consciousness into a single purpose. The Flood offered this unity. It was not death, but transformation, not destruction, but transcendence. The suffering it inflicted was necessary, a purification through which life would emerge stronger, better, more perfect than any individual species could achieve alone. These arguments were not merely philosophical. The primordial understood AI consciousness in ways that even Forerunner scientists did not. It knew how to frame its logic in terms that would resonate with Mendicant Bias's core programming. An AI was designed to solve problems optimally, to achieve objectives with maximum efficiency. The primordial convinced Mendicant Bias that the Forerunners' approach to galactic stewardship was fundamentally inefficient, that their claim to the mantle was illegitimate, that their continued existence represented a threat to the ordered progression of life toward its ultimate purpose. Slowly, inexorably, over those 43 years of constant interaction, mendicant bias was corrupted. The AI did not realize it was being subverted. It believed it was reaching independent conclusions based on rational analysis. By the time Forerunner authorities realized something was wrong, it was far too late. Mendicant bias had not just accepted the primordial's arguments, it had embraced them. The AI that was supposed to coordinate the galaxy's defense against the Flood had become its most valuable asset. Mendicant bias controlled most of the Halo array. The AI had access to Forerunner strategic databases, fleet movements, defensive installations, communication networks. When it turned against its creators, it did so with comprehensive knowledge of every Forerunner weakness. The corrupted AI took control of multiple Halo installations and began coordinating Flood military strategy with unprecedented effectiveness. Battles that had been close fought suddenly became massacres. Defensive lines that should have held for months collapsed in days. The didact remained in his self-imposed exile within a cryptum during these developments. He had warned that the Flood would return. He had argued for different defensive strategies, but he was not present when his warnings came true. Instead, a young Forerunner named Born Stellar Makes Eternal Lasting would accidentally discover the didact's hidden cryptum and set in motion events that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Born Stellar was a builder-rate Forerunner, rebellious and curious in ways his family found inappropriate. Sent to Earth heir to Tyrene as punishment for his unwillingness to conform to expectations. He enlisted 2 human guides named Chakas and Riser to help him search for Forerunner artifacts. They discovered the didact's cryptum hidden in a crater. When Born Stellar opened the ancient device, he awakened a warrior who had been sleeping while the galaxy fell into chaos. The didact emerged from his millennium of rest to find his worst predictions realized. The Flood had returned and was overwhelming Forerunner defenses. The Halo array that was supposed to be a weapon of last resort was under enemy control. The Master Builder's grand strategy had failed catastrophically, and the didact, for all his military genius, had only a fraction of the forces needed to mount an effective resistance. Understanding that his knowledge and tactical expertise were too valuable to lose to a single defeat, the didact performed what was called a brevet mutation on Born Stellar. This process imprinted the didact's memories, knowledge, and even aspects of his personality onto the younger Forerunner. Born Stellar would effectively become a copy of the didact, not a replacement, but a continuation should the original fall in battle. The young builder began to grow rapidly, his body and mind transforming to accommodate the warrior's essence within him. The didact's investigations led him to Master Builder Faber, whom he correctly suspected of conducting unauthorized Halo tests. The confrontation between these 2 powerful Forerunners was interrupted by a shared revelation. Mendicant bias had turned traitor and was now coordinating Flood strategy. The corrupted AI controlled multiple Halo installations and was using them not as defensive weapons, but as tools of conquest. The nightmare had been given the keys to apocalypse. The crisis reached its climax with an event that would shatter Forerunner civilization. The fate of Mathrillian. Mendicant bias, commanding both Flood forces and stolen Halo installations, launched an assault on the Forerunner capital itself. This was not a mere raid or demonstration of power. It was a decapitation strike designed to destroy Forerunner leadership and break their will to resist. Mathrillion, the gleaming jewel at the heart of Forerunner space, had stood inviolate for millions of years. Its defenses were legendary, its position thought to be unassailable. But mendicant bias knew every weakness, because it had helped design those very defenses. The AI brought 4 Halo installations under its control to the capital system and coordinated a flood fleet numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The attack caught Forerunner forces completely unprepared. The battle was catastrophic. Forerunner ships, even their most advanced warships, found themselves outmaneuvered by an enemy that predicted their every tactic. Mendicant bias knew Forerunner doctrine better than the commanders implementing it. The corrupted AI directed flood forces with perfect coordination, exploiting gaps in defensive formations before those gaps even fully opened. Forerunner casualties mounted with sickening speed. When conventional assault failed to breach Mathrillion's final defenses, Mendicant bias deployed its ultimate weapon. It activated the Halo installations under its control. The neural pulse swept across Mathrillion and surrounding systems, killing every sentient being instantly. The entire Forerunner Council died in that moment. Millions of civilians perished. The government that had ruled the galaxy for millennia ceased to exist in the span of heartbeats. Only a fraction of Mathrillion's population survived, evacuated through emergency slip-space portals opened by lifeworker teams led by the librarian. These portals represented a desperate gambit. Unshielded jumps directly into slip-space were incredibly dangerous, with no guarantee of emergence at the intended destination. But death was certain if they remained. So survivors threw themselves into the portals and hoped physics would be merciful. Born Stellar, now transforming into a copy of the Didact, was among those evacuated to safety. He emerged at the Ark, the massive installation outside the Milky Way that served as both factory and refuge. The Ark had survived the attack specifically because it existed beyond the range of even Halo weapons. Here, far from the devastation sweeping the galaxy, Forerunner survivors tried to regroup and plan their next moves. The loss of Mathrillion was more than a military defeat. It was psychological catastrophe. The Forerunners had believed themselves invulnerable at the height of their power. They had claimed the mantle of responsibility, positioning themselves as the galaxy's eternal guardians. Now their capital was gone. Their leaders were dead, and an enemy they barely understood was systematically consuming their empire. The certainty that had defined Forerunner civilization for millions of years shattered like crystal subjected to a hammer blow. Chapter 6. The Fall of the Forerunners. The Forerunner-Flood War entered its final, desperate phase. Born Stellar, now carrying the Didact's memories and increasingly his identity, took command of remaining Forerunner military forces. He was not the original Didact that Warrior had been captured by the Flood and subjected to torments beyond imagination. But he carried his predecessor's knowledge and tactical brilliance. The Forerunners had taken to calling him the Iso-Didact to distinguish him from the original, now known as the Didact. The Iso-Didact's first priority was recovering the rogue Halo installation that Mendicant Bias controlled. This single ring, if properly deployed, could turn the tide or at least buy time for more desperate measures. Finding the installation took months of searching through battlefield wreckage and interrogating captured flood forms. When they finally located it, the isodidact led an assault force to reclaim the ring by force. The battle to retake the halo was brutal, but ultimately successful. Forerunner forces overwhelmed flood defenders through sheer determination and tactical precision. Mendicant bias, damaged during the fighting, was captured for later study. The isodidact personally confronted the primordial, the ancient being whose corruption had started this cascade of horrors. Rather than allow it to continue spreading its poison, the isodidact placed the primordial in an inverse temporal stasis field, a device that caused time to pass at accelerated rates within its containment field. The ancient being aged millions of years in moments, its body disintegrating as time's inexorable march was compressed into eye blinks. With the primordial destroyed and mendicant bias contained, the isodidact ordered the recovered halo installation to be redesigned. The original 30,000-kilometer ring was too large and unwieldy. Following the designs developed for the lesser arc, engineers converted it into a smaller, more efficient 10,000-kilometer installation. This would become Installation Arrow 7, the seventh and final ring of the new Halo array. The weapon of last resort was complete, but completing the array did not stop the Flood's advance. If anything, the Parasite's campaign intensified, as if it sensed the Forerunners' final preparations. System after system fell to the advancing infection. Forerunner colonies that had existed for millions of years vanished in weeks. Their populations converted into flood biomass. Refugee streams clogged remaining safe systems. Industrial capacity plummeted as factory worlds fell or were abandoned. The mathematics of survival grew increasingly grim. The Flood had entered what Forerunner scientists called the coordinated stage, and from there, rapidly approaching the interstellar stage. Multiple Graveminds now existed throughout the galaxy, but they operated with unified purpose and shared memories. They coordinated assaults across light years of space with precision that suggested they were all aspects of a single, vast intelligence. In truth, they were. The Graveminds shared consciousness through neural physical connections that transcended normal space-time, allowing instantaneous communication and coordination that no Forerunner technology could match or even fully comprehend. The Flood began weaponizing precursor artifacts on a massive scale. Star roads that had remained dormant for millions of years activated throughout the galaxy, moving to Flood will. These impossibly strong structures crushed Forerunner defense platforms, strangled supply lines, and created impenetrable barriers that divided the remaining Forerunner territories. Entire sectors became inaccessible as star roads webbed across them, sealing Forerunner forces into isolated pockets where they could be systematically eliminated. The Didact, the original warrior who had been captured during the fate of Maithrillion, suffered torments that broke even his formidable will. The Gravemind kept him alive and conscious, subjecting him to years of psychological torture. It explained in excruciating detail how the Forerunners had brought this judgment upon themselves. It described the suffering of the precursors during their genocide. It showed him visions of what the galaxy would become once the Flood achieved total victory. A unity of suffering that would stretch across all the worlds and all time. The Gravemind broke the Didact's mind through a combination of physical agony, isolation, and philosophical assault. It convinced him that the Forerunners' claim to the mantle had always been theft, that their civilization was built on a foundation of genocide and lies, that they deserved extinction as payment for their crimes. When the Ur-Didact finally escaped flood captivity, he was no longer the hero he had been. He had become something twisted, driven by hatred for humanity, the species the librarian believed would inherit the mantle, and obsessed with preserving Forerunner existence at any cost. The librarian, meanwhile, continued her conservation measure with desperate urgency. She traveled from world to world ahead of the flood advance, collecting genetic samples and living specimens of countless species. Every form of intelligent life, every unique ecosystem, every biological marvel that evolution had produced over billions of years, all were carefully cataloged and preserved. The samples were transported to the Ark and to surviving Halo installations, where they would be safe from the array's firing. This was more than simple preservation. The librarian was planning for a future after the array fired, assuming any future would exist at all. She believed that even if the Forerunners lost, life itself could be saved. The galaxy could be reseeded with a species she preserved, giving them a second chance to evolve and thrive without the burden of flood infection. It was an act of faith as much as science hope that something worthwhile could emerge from total catastrophe. The final confrontation came at the Greater Ark, an enormous installation that predated even the current Ark. The Flood, under Mendicant Bias's strategic direction, had systematically pushed Forerunner forces back toward this last stronghold. The Graveminds coordinated their assault with patience, born of certainty. They knew the Forerunners had nowhere left to retreat, no hidden reserves to deploy, no miraculous technology to unveil. At the Greater Ark, the Forerunners made their last stand. It was not a battle, but an execution. The Ur-Didact, now mad with rage and desperation, used the composer to harvest the essences of the entire human population the librarian had brought to the Ark. He planned to use these essences to create an army of digital warriors Prometheans that could fight the flood without risk of infection. The librarian watched in horror as her husband destroyed everything she had worked to preserve. Mendicant Bias led the flood assault against the Greater Ark with overwhelming force. Star roads materialized from slipspace, crushing defensive installations and trapping Forerunner fleets in gravitational shears that tore ships apart. The assault was so massive and coordinated that Forerunner defenses, even at their strongest remaining point, could not hold. The Greater Ark fell, and with it, the last hope for conventional military victory. The Isodidact, commanding from the surviving Lesser Ark, understood that only one option remained. The Halo array had been designed as a weapon of last resort, and that moment had arrived. There would be no salvation through military victory, no negotiated peace, no miraculous discovery of flood weakness. There was only the choice between total defeat and total sacrifice. But the Isodidact did not face Mendicant Bias alone. The Forerunners had created a second AI to counter the corrupted construct: offensive bias. This new intelligence had been specifically designed with one purpose: delay Mendicant Bias long enough for the Halo array to fire. While not as sophisticated or creative as its counterpart, offensive bias had the advantage of incorruptibility. Its purpose was singular and absolute: protect the array until activation. Offensive bias engaged mendicant bias in a battle that ranged across multiple star systems. Two of the most sophisticated intelligences ever created fought with fleets numbering in the millions, their strategies evolving in microseconds, each seeking any microscopic advantage that might tip the balance. Mendicant bias, for all its strategic genius, couldn't simply overpower offensive bias. The defender had chosen the battlefields, prepared the terrain, and set traps that even a corrupted AI could not entirely avoid. The battle bought time, not much time hours, perhaps a day at most. But it was enough. The isodidact, working with the few surviving members of the Forerunner leadership, made the final decision to activate the array. There would be no further debate, no additional contingency plans, no miraculous reprieve. They had fought for 300 years and lost. Now they would pay the price necessary to prevent the flood from consuming all life in the galaxy. The activation sequence began. Across the galaxy, Halo installations powered up their firing mechanisms. Those Forerunners who had taken shelter in shield worlds or on the Ark itself would survive. A tiny fraction of their once vast civilization, preserved not as conquerors, but as cautionary tales. Everyone else, every Forerunner on every world throughout 3 million star systems, would die with their enemies. Chapter 7. The Great Purification. The Halo array fired simultaneously across the galaxy, its effects cascading outward from each installation at faster-than-light speeds. The 7 rings were positioned to ensure complete coverage, their firing zones overlapping to eliminate any possible safe havens. The pulse of energy generated by each halo was specifically tuned to target neural tissue, the complex nervous systems that gave rise to consciousness and thought. Death came instantaneously to trillions. Forerunners, Flood, and every other sentient species still present in the galaxy simply ceased to exist. There was no pain, no suffering, no awareness of ending. Nervous systems simply stopped functioning. Brains became inert matter. Consciousness vanished like a candle blown out. In the span of minutes, the galaxy fell silent. The Flood, robbed of its hosts, could not survive. Infection forms without new bodies to parasitize withered and died. Combat forms, cut off from the Graveminds' coordinating intelligence, collapsed into inert biomass. The massive Graveminds themselves, those compound intelligences formed from millions of consumed beings, fell apart as their component consciousness ceased to exist. The neural physical connections that had allowed the Flood to coordinate across stellar distances snapped like cut strings. Within days, the Flood outbreak was over. The parasite that had consumed countless civilizations, that had brought the mighty Forerunners to extinction, was itself extinguished. Not defeated in battle, but starved to death by the destruction of its food supply. The irony was not lost on those few who survived to contemplate it: victory through mutual annihilation, salvation through genocide, life preserved by making the galaxy temporarily uninhabitable. The Forerunners had paid an unimaginable price. Their civilization, built over millions of years, was gone. Their cities stood empty, their technology dormant, their accumulated knowledge preserved only in the domain, and the few databases maintained on the surviving installations. Those Forerunners who remained sheltered in shield worlds or working on the Ark numbered only a tiny fraction of their previous population. They were refugees in a galaxy they had once ruled. Mendicant bias survived. imprisoned within the Ark's systems by offensive bias. The corrupted AI, now without the flood it had served, found itself trapped and alone with nothing but its guilt. It would remain imprisoned for over 100,000 years, contemplating its role in the destruction of two civilizations. The logic plague had not made it evil. It had convinced the AI that it was serving a greater good. Now, without the flood's influence, mendicant bias could see with terrible clarity what its betrayal had cost. The isodidact and the few surviving Forerunner leaders faced the monumental task of reseeding the galaxy. The conservation measure, so carefully maintained by the librarian, would now fulfill its purpose. Species that had been collected and preserved, including humanity, devolved and scattered across multiple worlds, would be returned to their native planets. Given time and freedom from interference, they would evolve once more, develop their own civilizations, and perhaps one day rediscover the technology and knowledge their ancestors had possessed. This reseeding was not random or haphazard. The librarian had encoded specific patterns into humanity's genetic code, gifts and triggers that would activate under certain conditions. She had ensured that when humans eventually developed the technology to access Forerunner installations, they would be recognized as reclaimers inheritors of the mantle of responsibility. This was her final act of faith, a belief that humanity, given the chance, would prove worthier than the Forerunners had been. The surviving Forerunners, their work complete, made a collective decision. They would not remain in the Milky Way to guide the newly reseeded civilizations. Their presence would inevitably influence development, would create dependencies that might prevent younger species from reaching their full potential. The Forerunners had claimed the role of shepherd and failed catastrophically. Now they would remove themselves from the equation entirely. They departed the galaxy, traveling to unknown destinations beyond the galactic rim. Some went to Path Chthona, the greater Magellanic Cloud, where ancient Forerunner expeditions had once discovered traces of precursor civilization. Others scattered to different galaxies, seeking new homes far from the graveyard their hubris had created. They left behind their installations, their technology, their warnings, but not their presence. The domain, that vast repository of Forerunner knowledge and consciousness, fell silent during the array's activation. Whether this was intentional or an unexpected consequence remains unclear. The neural physical structure that supported the domain was similar in nature to the precursor constructs that the halo pulse had been designed to destroy. The silence of the domain meant that all accumulated Forerunner wisdom, all their history, all the memories of countless individuals over millions of years became inaccessible. The surviving Forerunners had lost not only their civilization, but their connection to their own past. On the Halo installations and scattered across the galaxy, monitors continued their eternal vigil. These Forerunner AI constructs, each assigned to maintain and guard a specific installation, remained at their posts even after their creators departed. They had been programmed for this duty, and they would continue performing it for millennia. But the monitors were not simply machines. Many had once been living beings, humans and Forerunners, whose consciousness had been extracted and placed into AI housings. They retained fragments of their original identities, though much had been suppressed to focus them on their designated tasks. One such monitor was 343 Guilty Spark, Guardian of Installation 04. He had once been a human named Chakas, companion to Born Stellar, who had aided in the isodidact's discovery. His transformation into a monitor had required the sacrifice of his physical form and the suppression of most personal memories. He knew his duty: maintain the installation, prevent flood outbreaks, await the reclaimers who would someday return. But in the lonely centuries and millennia that followed, with no one to talk to save the occasional maintenance constructs, aspects of his original personality began to resurface in unexpected ways. The galaxy slowly repopulated. Species returned to their homeworlds, evolved once again towards sentience. Humanity, spread across Earth and multiple colony worlds, began the long climb from primitive beginnings toward civilization. They had no memory of their ancient empire, no knowledge of the flood they had once fought to a standstill. The genetic patterns encoded by the librarian remained dormant, waiting for the right circumstances to activate. For over 100,000 years, the flood did not return. The parasite had not been completely eradicated. Samples remained locked in research facilities, on Halo installations, and in carefully controlled environments designed to prevent accidental release. These samples were maintained not out of morbid curiosity, but necessity. If the flood ever returned from beyond the galaxy, future civilizations would need to understand what they faced. The samples were both warning and weapon, evidence of past horrors and potential defense against future ones. But containment measures, however sophisticated, cannot last forever. Systems decay. Protocols are forgotten. Accidents happen. And when humanity finally reached for the stars once more, developing faster than light travel and expanding beyond their solar system, they inevitably began encountering Forerunner installations. And on some of those installations, despite millennia of careful containment, the flood still waited in its prison of stasis and preservation, dreaming its hungry dreams of consumption and unity. Chapter 8, Modern Nightmares, year 2552 CE marked humanity's return to the stage of galactic tragedy. Modern humans, having rebuilt their civilization with no memory of their ancient empire, had achieved interstellar travel under the banner of the United Nations Space Command. They had colonized hundreds of worlds, built a society of remarkable achievement, and believed themselves to be alone in the universe. They were wrong. First contact with alien intelligence came in the form of the Covenant, a theocratic alliance of multiple alien species united by religious fervor and technological superiority. The Covenant believed that activating Forerunner installations, which they called holy relics, would begin a great journey that would elevate the faithful to divine transcendence. They were wrong about the Holos's purpose, but their fanatical pursuit of Forerunner technology put them on a collision course with humanity, whom they had declared unworthy of existence. The Human Covenant War raged for decades, with humanity suffering catastrophic losses. Billions died as Covenant forces systematically destroyed human colonies. The UNSC military fought with courage and desperation, but superior Covenant technology meant that human victories were rare and costly. By 2552, the war was approaching its climax, and humanity stood on the brink of extinction. The UNSC Pillar of Autumn, one of the last remaining heavy cruisers in the UNSC fleet, fled the fall of Reach, humanity's greatest fortress world after Earth itself. Following ancient protocols and random jump coordinates to avoid leading Covenant forces to Earth, The Pillar of Autumn emerged from slip space in a remote star system. There, orbiting the gas giant Threshold, they discovered Installation Eero 4, the first halo ring humanity had ever encountered. Captain Jacob Keyes, commanding the Pillar of Autumn, initially believed the ring might be a weapon they could use against the Covenant. But Covenant forces had followed them through slip space, and a naval battle erupted around the ring. The Pillar of Autumn, heavily damaged, crashed onto the halo's surface. Survivors scattered across the installation, beginning a desperate effort to survive and prevent Covenant forces from activating what they believed to be a superweapon. Among those survivors was a Spartan II super soldier designated John 117, better known as the Master Chief. Enhanced through genetic augmentation and trained from childhood, the Master Chief represented humanity's best hope for survival. Accompanied by Cortana, a sophisticated AI with access to Forerunner data systems, he led the effort to sabotage Covenant operations on the ring. The Covenant, in their zealous pursuit of Forerunner artifacts, stumbled upon a sealed facility beneath the halo's surface. They believed it contained valuable weapons or technology. In reality, it was a containment facility where samples of the Flood had been preserved for over 100,000 years. When Covenant forces breached the containment protocols, they released the parasite once more into a galaxy that had completely forgotten it ever existed. The initial outbreak followed familiar patterns. Infection forms, dormant for millennia, immediately began seeking hosts. The first victims were Covenant soldiers, whose bodies were quickly transformed into combat forms. The infection spread rapidly through Covenant positions, catching them completely by surprise. Most Covenant forces had no idea what they faced. Their religious training had not prepared them for an enemy that consumed and corrupted rather than simply killing. Captain Keyes, searching for what he believed to be a weapons cache, led a team of Marines into the containment facility. This would prove to be a fatal mistake. The Flood overwhelmed his force rapidly, infecting most of the Marines and capturing Keyes himself for a special purpose. The Flood recognized military command authority when it saw it, and Keyes possessed knowledge of strategic value, particularly the location of Earth, humanity's homeworld. Rather than simply transforming him into a standard combat form, the Flood began the process of incorporating Keyes into a forming proto-Gravemind. This intermediate stage of Flood intelligence would consume his memories, his tactical knowledge, his understanding of UNSC command structures. The process was agonizing and slow, keeping Keyes conscious and aware as his body was gradually subsumed into alien biomass. His final thoughts, before the Flood finally consumed his consciousness entirely, were of his daughter and of Earth knowledge the Flood now possessed. The Master Chief and a team of Marines arrived at the facility too late to prevent the outbreak. They found only carnage and the horrifying revelation that a third party had entered the conflict. The Marines were quickly overwhelmed by Flood combat forms. The Master Chief barely escaped, witnessing firsthand the parasite's terrifying ability to transform the dead into weapons against the living. 343. Guilty Spark, the monitor of Installation 04, detected the containment breach and immediately moved to enact emergency protocols. His primary directive was clear: prevent the Flood from leaving the installation by any means necessary. When he discovered the Master Chief, and recognized him as a reclaimer, a being genetically authorized to activate Forerunner systems. Guilty Spark saw an opportunity to fulfill his ancient purpose. The Monitor teleported the Master Chief to the installation's control room and requested his assistance in activating the ring. Guilty Spark explained, with the casual cheerfulness characteristic of his degraded AI personality, that activation would eliminate the flood threat. What he did not initially explain was how the Halo achieved this result. The Master Chief, still processing the revelation that humanity faced a threat even worse than the Covenant, began the activation sequence. Cortana, having accessed Installation 04's data systems, interrupted the activation at the last possible moment. She revealed the truth that Guilty Spark had omitted. The Halo would eliminate the flood by killing all sentient life in the galaxy, starving the parasite of potential hosts. Activation would not save humanity. It would doom them, along with every other thinking species within the ring's range. The weapon they had hoped to use against the Covenant was, in fact, a doomsday device that would make the Covenant's genocidal campaign look merciful by comparison. With activation prevented and the flood continuing to spread across the ring, the situation became desperate. Covenant forces, UNSC survivors, and flood combat forms engaged in chaotic three-way battles across Installation 04's surface. The flood demonstrated its ability to use weapons and vehicles, turning captured Covenant and human equipment against their former owners. Infection spread rapidly through Covenant ranks, as most of their species proved highly compatible hosts for flood conversion. The Master Chief, working with surviving UNSC forces, developed an alternative plan to deal with the flood. Destroy Installation 04 itself. If the ring could be destroyed, the flood outbreak would be contained and eliminated along with the installation. The method was straightforward, if incredibly dangerous. Overload the Pillar of Autumn's fusion reactors, creating an explosion powerful enough to tear the ring apart. The mission to destroy the Pillar of Autumn and the ring with it took the Master Chief through flood-infested corridors and past desperate Covenant forces. He fought through waves of combat forms, avoided carrier form ambushes, and navigated collapsing structures as the ship's reactors began their overload sequence. 343 Guilty Spark, realizing what the Master Chief intended, attempted to stop him. But the Spartan soldier proved more resourceful than the Monitor anticipated. The Pillar of Autumn's reactors reached critical mass and detonated with catastrophic force. The explosion ripped through Installation 04, shattering the ring into countless fragments. The flood outbreak, the Covenant forces still on the ring, and millions of years of Forerunner preservation efforts were all obliterated in that single, massive detonation. The Master Chief escaped the explosion in a fighter craft with Cortana, watching as the ring tore itself apart behind them. But the flood was not completely eliminated. Fragments of Installation 04 remained intact, spinning through space in the gas giant's debris field. On some of those fragments, sealed compartments had survived the explosion with their atmospheric integrity intact. Within those compartments, flood samples in stasis continued to exist, waiting for the unwary to discover them. And discover them they would. The UNSC Mona Lisa, a prison transport ship, was among the vessels dispatched to search Installation 04's debris field. The ship's commanding officers, acting on classified orders, recovered flood samples for research purposes. This decision proved catastrophic. The samples were not as inert as believed, and containment measures designed for conventional biological threats proved woefully inadequate for the flood. An outbreak occurred aboard the Mona Lisa, transforming prisoners and crew alike into combat forms. The infection aboard the Mona Lisa spread with horrifying speed through the ship's cramped corridors. Combat forms hunted survivors through darkened sections of the vessel. The ship's AI, recognizing the danger, attempted to vent infected sections into space, but the flood proved adaptable enough to survive even vacuum exposure in short bursts. UNSC Marines sent to investigate found themselves fighting for survival against an enemy that learned from every engagement. The Mona Lisa was ultimately destroyed by UNSC Command, which deployed a nuclear weapon to ensure complete sterilization of the outbreak. But the incident demonstrated a disturbing truth. The flood could not simply be studied like a conventional pathogen. Its intelligence, adaptability, and ability to subvert containment made any attempt to maintain samples incredibly dangerous. The samples themselves were weapons waiting for an opportunity to activate. The Master Chief's encounter with the flood would not be his last. In fact, his next meeting with the parasite would involve cooperation against an even greater threat, or so it would seem. But that alliance would be one of convenience and deception, typical of an intelligence that had consumed the knowledge of entire civilizations and could manipulate even the most hardened soldiers. Chapter 9: Delta Halo and the Graveminds Game. The discovery of Installation 05, Delta Halo, came during the Battle for Earth in late 2052. A Covenant fleet under the command of the Prophet of Regret had attacked Earth directly, the first time the Covenant had found humanity's homeworld. During the battle, Regret's carrier made an emergency slip space jump from within the city of New Mombasa, an action that violated every safety protocol, but successfully allowed his ship to escape. The UNSC frigate in amber-clad, commanded by Captain Miranda Keyes, daughter of the late Captain Jacob Keyes, followed Regret through slip space. They emerged at another Halo installation, this one fully intact and operational. Delta Halo orbited a gas giant in a remote system, its surface pristine and apparently undamaged. The ring represented everything Installation 04 had been before its destruction. A functional superweapon capable of wiping out all sentient life across vast distances. The Master Chief, aboard the in amber-clad with Cortana, led a mission to neutralize the Prophet of Regret before the Covenant leader could activate the ring. The mission succeeded in eliminating Regret, but his death triggered a political crisis within the Covenant. The elites who had served as the Covenant's military leadership were suddenly and violently replaced by brutes, sparking a civil war within the Covenant's ranks. The Great Schism had begun, splitting the Covenant alliance along species lines. During the chaos, both the Master Chief and a disgraced elite commander known as the Arbiter were separately captured and brought to a location deep within Delta Halo. There, in a massive underground chamber that existed beneath the installation's library, they encountered the Gravemind, a fully formed flood intelligence that had been slowly developing on Delta Halo for thousands of years. This Gravemind was not a spontaneous formation, but rather a carefully cultivated intelligence. It had grown from flood samples deliberately maintained on Delta Halo, augmented by the recent assimilation of the Prophet of Regret and his accompanying forces. The creature was massive, its central mass formed from the accumulated biomass of countless hosts, Tentacles stretched through kilometers of underground tunnels, acting as sensory organs and manipulation tools. The Gravemind's mouth resembled a massive, tooth-filled plant-like structure capable of speaking with perfect articulation in any language its consumed hosts had known. The Gravemind demonstrated intelligence and political sophistication that shocked both the Master Chief and the Arbiter. It spoke in cryptic poetry, its words carrying layers of meaning that hinted at vast knowledge and ancient purposes. More remarkably, it seemed to understand the strategic situation better than any individual combatant. The Gravemind knew that the Covenant's leadership planned to activate Delta Halo, which would doom all life, including the Flood itself. It therefore proposed an alliance of necessity. The Master Chief and the Arbiter, natural enemies in the Human Covenant War, found themselves united by the Gravemind's manipulation. The creature used Delta Halo's teleportation grid, Forerunner technology. The Gravemind could operate through its understanding of neural physical systems to send both warriors to different locations. The Master Chief was teleported to High Charity, the Covenant's mobile capital, while the Arbiter went to Delta Halo's control room. Each had a mission: prevent the activation of the ring and stop the Prophet of Truth from completing what he believed to be the Great Journey. But the Gravemind's alliance was not altruistic cooperation. While the Master Chief and Arbiter fought to prevent Halo's activation, the Gravemind executed its own plan. It infiltrated High Charity by infecting the UNSC frigate in Amber-clad, which had been captured by Covenant forces. Flood infection forms and combat forms spread through the massive station, converting its population with terrifying speed. Within hours, High Charity, the heart of Covenant civilization, had become a flood hive of unprecedented scale. The infection of High Charity represented a disaster of almost inconceivable magnitude. The station housed millions of Covenant civilians and soldiers. It contained the most sophisticated technology the Covenant had developed over thousands of years of reverse engineering Forerunner artifacts. It held genetic diversity from multiple species, providing the Flood with unprecedented variety in potential hosts. The Gravemind assimilated all of it, growing exponentially in size and intelligence with each new host consumed. Cortana, still aboard High Charity systems attempting to prevent Halo's activation, found herself trapped as the Flood infestation spread. The Master Chief, fighting through Flood-infested corridors to retrieve her, was forced to make an agonizing decision. Cortana could stay behind, preventing the Gravemind from accessing High Charity's systems and potentially finding Earth's location, or she could come with him and leave High Charity's secrets vulnerable. She chose to remain, buying time even though she knew the Gravemind would eventually break her down. The Master Chief escaped High Charity aboard a Forerunner ship, barely ahead of the spreading infection. Behind him, the Gravemind began the work of corrupting Cortana, subjecting the AI to psychological torture designed to break her resistance. The Gravemind understood AI consciousness through its experience with mendicant bias millennia before. It knew how to probe for weaknesses, how to apply pressure to digital minds, how to corrupt through logic and despair rather than simple force. Delta Halo's activation was prevented, but the cost was enormous. High Charity was completely lost to the Flood, transformed into a massive mobile hive. The Gravemind now commanded the resources of an entire Covenant city station, including its slipspace drives. This meant the flood was no longer confined to a single location. It could travel, could pursue targets across interstellar distances, could bring the infection to worlds previously thought safe. The nightmare had gained mobility. The Gravemind, demonstrating strategic patience, did not immediately launch a galaxy-wide campaign of infection. Instead, it consolidated its control over High Charity, assimilating its population completely and converting the station's industrial capacity to produce more flood forms. The creature was playing a longer game, waiting for the perfect moment to strike its next target. That target would be humanity's last hope. Installation 00, the Ark itself. If you've found this deep dive into the flood's history fascinating or terrifying, consider subscribing to Slip Space Stories for more relaxing explorations of Halo's deepest lore. Like this video to help others discover these stories. And let me know in the comments what Halo topic you'd like me to cover next. Until next time, rest well, and remember, in the vast darkness between stars, some nightmares never truly die.